Hey, so I thought I'd make a video. You might have seen my post on Facebook yesterday about me finally managing to do the full splits. Now, to be honest, I only did it on the one side, still working on the other side. But that's not the point entirely. I do feel pretty victorious after telling myself my whole life I couldn't do the splits because of my hips, and I have hip issues, but as a yoga instructor, I now realize we all have hip issues to some degree. So just putting that aside and really learning how to explore the space in your body, taking the preparatory poses on your way to, creating that space to come into the splits without fixating so much on the end result. So it really is about the journey, not just the destination. But the more time you put in and the more effort, the more likely you are possibly to come into full splits. So I'm going to show you some of the poses that I practice in order to create the space in my hips, in the fronts and the backs of my legs, in order to work toward the splits. And I just suggest practicing these variations and then seeing, over time how that feels for you. And don't be discouraged. I mean, in addition to yoga, I love to lift weights. I love to do a really hard class at track, to do boot camps. And so sometimes, I'll do this. I've done the splits yesterday, and right now when I do these poses with you, I'm going to be really tight. So it's a cycle. You've got to keep approaching it. Just because you do the splits once doesn't mean you officially now can do the splits. And it's like that with all of our yoga postures. So just be patient. So the first one we're going to come into is a low lunge. If you have blocks, you can have them nearby. And I definitely think having blocks at home is really important. You can grab them. Oh, there's so many places you could grab them. But anyway, for now you could use maybe some books or something else to prop yourself up. So come into your downward dog. And then from your downward dog, you're going to want to step your right foot forward between your hands. Now, if it doesn't get right between the hands, you can heel toe it between the hands, or you can assist it with the hand. So drop your back knee, and not just dropping it where you'll likely land on top of the kneecap, but heel toe the leg back so your knee moves further away from the hip. So the idea is to get a greater distance between hip and knee so that you lengthen the muscle along the front of the leg. And also not putting as much pressure on the kneecap. I have a nice thick mat. I have the mat from Lululemon, so I'm okay without the cushion. But I definitely recommend any discomfort in the knee whatsoever, cushion the mat, or just simply double it. So that's rolling it so that you have double the mat beneath your knee. It takes a second. It's worth it. So you might find that you have to have your hands maintained onto the floor, so you might keep them here. You might bring your hands up onto blocks. You're going to shift your left hip forward, so the back leg, hip forward, the right leg, the right hip, back. Reach your chest through your arms. Maybe you bring your hands up onto your thigh. Interlace your fingers, cupping the thigh. Press the thigh away from you to lift yourself up and out of the waist. So not just puffing the front ribs, but lifting the rib cage up and out of the waist so you find more torso. And then keep your shoulders down your back, and maybe you'd like to lift your arms up. If that's too much, return to any of the previous variations. So you'll hold the lunge for a little while. Now, as much as we want to let our hips get low and send our pubic bone forward to lengthen the low back and create a little more space, we don't want to soften through the pelvic floor and the inner thighs. We don't just want to let our insides to the floor. We want to squeeze the inner thighs together and firm the pelvic floor. So what does that mean? So when you take a nice deep breath in, all the way down, deep down past the belly into the pelvic floor, just a gentle contraction of the muscles between the two sits bones and the pubic bone, contracting and feeling a lift up through there, through the torso. So you'll keep your low lunge. Practice this, maybe 5 breaths. Bring your hands down. Keep the legs for the most part. We'll walk the blocks and or hands outward slightly. Heel toe your right foot to the right. So if your hands were shoulder width, your right foot would be just outside of your right hand. And so from here, you want to turn your right toes to the right side of the mat. So you're externally rotating the toes. So if this is 12 o'clock directly in front of you, you're now turning your right toes toward 1 o'clock. So from here, you'll stay up on your hands if that's enough for you, or you can come down to your forearms, which is quite a big difference. And so maybe it's best for you to put a block to create a bit of height for yourself. 3 settings for height on the blocks, so find which setting works for you. So a lot of the time we get in here and it's really tight and we start to crawl inside of ourselves just while we survive it. It's really nice to reach your chest through your arms, elongate your spine, and feel once again your torso lifting and lengthening out of your hips to help to assist the length in the front of your left leg. So this right leg, it could be grounded through the foot, or you could let your knee fall out. But just know that if the knee falls out, you have to also roll up your big toe mound so that you're on the outer edge of the right foot. So this is what the pose looks like from this side. So I'm also going to show it to you from the other side. So you're in the low lunge. This knee is rolling out, the big toe mound's lifting up. Sending your hips forward, nice long spine, and you're either on your forearms, on the blocks, forearms on the floor, fingertips on the floor, arms straight. There is a variation that some people like to practice lifting up the back leg. It's a little more active. But you know, if you're only going to hover it above the mat, you're not really going to put the 100% into lifting that leg up and pressing it up a lot to straighten it. Keep it down. So there's a lot more fire in the lifted leg, and there's a more restorative quality in the leg down. So we're going to keep the legs as they are. So you might want to draw your knee in just while you transition. Nice to keep your left hand on a block, propping your hand up so that your torso is a little more lifted. If your hand is on the ground, the pose is going to be a little more challenging, and the higher you put the block, the more support you're giving to yourself. So if your block is on the highest setting, then the pose might be a little more accessible. You're going to turn your right hand back, reaching toward the left foot. So you're now twisting toward the front leg. You're going to do your best to keep your hips as they are. So you're literally lifting your ribs up and out of your waist and reaching back. You're going to bend the back leg. So make sure you're not right on top of that kneecap again. The kneecap is back. You're just above the kneecap. There's a nice long distance between the knee and the hip. Grab the foot. And here is your hip flexor stretch. So this is pretty intense. If you can't find your foot, you can lasso the foot with a towel, with a strap, a belt, a tie, any sort of vessel that can lasso around your foot. Otherwise, you can just have the muscular intention here, so your leg is engaged and you're reaching back for the leg. So you'd hold here. So if you want to make this a little more intense, if you feel supported, you have the foot, you can also roll the knee out, but the big toe mound must lift. So the reason for that is that your toes and your knees are always facing the same direction, otherwise your knee is torquing. So where the foot goes, the knee goes, and where the knee goes, the foot goes. Okay? So this is the variation. So you've got those poses that all flow into one another. So you want to gently come out of this. You could step back to a downward dog. You could take a vinyasa. You could take a child's pose, whatever you'd like. And then you repeat that on the other side. So that's the low lunge with the arm variations. And then the lizard pose. And then reaching back for the back foot. So those are really great options to get into the legs. So you can also come into half Hanumanasana. So in half Hanumanasana, which is essentially in English a half split, it's really great for lengthening the front of the leg. So again, you'll come into down dog. You'll step the foot forward and drop the back knee. So this is very different from the previous variation where we slid the knee back. In half Hanumanasana, you do want the knee under the hip for the support. And you're going to heel toe the front foot forward away from you as much as you can. So if your foot is on your rubber mat, it'll take a second to heel toe your foot forward. And if you want to make it a little easier on yourself, you can have your foot off of your mat on a towel and use the towel to help slide the heel away from you, just knowing that you'll need to be in a little more control of it because your foot could go forward pretty quickly. So if you're very tight in the hamstrings, I would recommend heel toeing. So once you have the foot forward, the hip of the foot that's forward, so in my case, my left foot is forward, my left hip is really going to want to wrap forward. You want to wrap your hip back. So I like to hook my thumb in the hip crease, wrap the hip back. You'll feel that lengthening up through the hamstring. And then from here, you'll reach your chest forward, wrap your right ribs and your right hip toward the left leg. So if you're on the other side, just switching and alternating what I'm saying. Reach your chest toward your toes, any amount, folding forward. So here your hands could definitely be on your blocks, propping yourself up. But don't lock the joints, or else you won't have any suppleness anywhere to let the breath take you. So keep a nice bend in the elbows, reach the chest forward with every inhale. Every exhale, hinge forward from the hip crease, abdomen to thigh. Again, inhale, reaching chest toward toes, exhale, folding forward over the leg. And creating some space in the abdomen, so you're hugging your lower belly in and up, not only to create space for that compression, but to engage your core, to lift and elongate your torso forward, and to help release the low back. Okay, so don't let your belly just be soft and not serve you. There's a lot to be said about engaging the core in all of these postures. So you'll reach forward, you'll take this pose on this side, and you can take the pose on the other side. So you'll simply switch sides. And then if you wanted to, from here is when you can begin to come into your full Hanumanasana variation. I wouldn't practice that just yet. I would stick to using all these variations first, but just for those of you who feel like you're very close, you would step forward, bending the front knee, freeing up the back leg of your body weight, and then you slide your back knee away from you. I happen to be on the side that I did not achieve the splits on yesterday, so I didn't plan that one through. But anyway, whether or not I get into it right now is not the point of this video. So from here, you'll heel toe the back foot away from you and the front foot forward. You'll wrap the left hip, not letting it hike up, but wrapping it down and under. Keeping a nice long spine. Hands supported. Didn't put my phone on silent. Hands supported here. And you could just explore this pose. So again, keeping the pelvic floor engaged. And then as opposed to staying upright, you might want to hug your lower belly in and up, reach out of the waist and fold it forward, hugging abdomen toward the front thigh. You could walk your hands forward at this point and begin to soften toward the floor. So no matter how big this space is, you really want to support yourself. So whether your hands are on blocks or your hands are on the mat, you could also have the option of putting a block underneath the hip that's really lifted. So I wouldn't rely on this. It can become a crutch, but it is nice to allow your body to let go of some of the defense mechanisms that start to happen. So you start to contract your muscles a lot because you don't really want to come into the pose because it's pretty deep. So you'll want to put the block beneath you, soften around the block, feel yourself just easing into it a little bit, and then maybe you could remove the block from out from underneath you, and then try it without the block. Coming out of this pose, you're going to want to press firmly down into your hands, draw your back knee inward for support, lean the body forward, pressing into the front foot, ground the hands, and from here you can step back into a downward dog, a child's pose, any of these things. So these are a couple of the poses that I use as tools to create space in my legs. I also use the Padangusasana series with the strap lying on the back, strapping the foot around the strap around your foot. That's really effective. But these alone should help to create some space, and then I'll create more videos as we move further along. So thanks for watching, and good luck doing the splits. And message me if you have any questions.